Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm your host, Craig Fahle. Lots to talk about this week for sure, and I have a panel that is raring to go. Welcome to Alan Lengel, of course, the editor and co-founder of Deadline Detroit. We appreciate you being
Hey,
here. Thank you
thanks.
very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Nancy Derringer is not with us today, so we decided to recruit a different Nancy to join us, Nancy Kaffer, of course, of the editorial team at the Detroit Free Press. Nancy, welcome. Well, she just froze there. She's there. Des Cooper, of course,
Thank you so
longtime
much.
columnist for the Detroit Free Press, filmmaker now, and we'll talk a bit about your little project a little bit later on because it's very cool. Welcome back, Des. It's good to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
And, of course, noted attorney Steve Fishman making a return visit to the week that was. We always appreciate you, sir.
I'm looking forward to it as usual.
Well, okay, let's just get where we are here. Yesterday, on the day that John Lewis was buried, of course, a champion of civil rights, a champion of voting rights in this country, moving speeches by Presidents Bush, Obama, and Clinton at this event yesterday. Donald Trump didn't even bother to go see the body when it laid in state at the U.S. Capitol, said he wasn't going to go there, wasn't going to do anything. And on the day that we are burying a civil rights icon, he tweets about potentially postponing the election. At the same time, he posted in the same day, within 48 hours, a note about basically getting rid of the Fair Housing Act, among other things. You could not have a starker contrast, I guess, in styles when we watched Barack Obama yesterday and President Trump's flailings on Twitter. This, for me, was not shocking. It's not shocking anymore. Nothing is shocking here, but it certainly was symbolic. And you know what? I'm going to give Des the first chance to talk a little bit about this. I mean, John Lewis, such an important figure in our history. And to watch President Trump do what he did yesterday was either tone deaf or intentional. I'm not sure.
He's an ass, and I'm just tired talking about him. You know, I mean,
Well,
what
it's
I
going to be a short show then.
what I want to talk about, because it's intentional. He's an ass, but there was a moment during that funeral that I lost it, and it was when Obama said that John Lewis took all 20 of his short years and slid them to the center of the table and bet them all on his actions to change history. And I just lost it. I mean, I'm not focusing on Bunker Baby, okay? What I'm focusing on now is how do we take every ounce of our lives at this point and push them to the center of the table and say, this is it. We're either saving America now or we're going down with this ship. You know, and no matter where we are in life and no matter what we're doing, this is the choice we're facing right now as Americans. And so I think, yeah, you're right, Craig. Yesterday was when the gauntlet was really thrown down. If it hasn't been thrown down every day of 2020, yesterday was the day. So that's where I am. I'm on going forward. This man is not going to delay any elections. He's not going to steal one vote, and we're going to vote and vote so hard and so often, not each person often, but everyone voting, that it's just going to be undeniable that Americans want their America back. And that's what we're going to do.
It's interesting. Yesterday, I took a walk through the Wayne State campus, and I was playing the song Chicago from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And I just really brought back what was happening back there, where thousands of people were out on the streets protesting and thousands of people were demanding change. And we saw, people started growing their hair long, even, people were fairly straight business people. And it really was somewhat of a revolution. I think we're going through that right now. And, some of it's good. But it's scary because there's so much uncertainty, and we have a leader that has some similarities to Nixon in terms of not being very ethical and not being very caring about a good segment of the population. But there are dissimilarities, of course. But it's an interesting time that we're in.
Well, go ahead, Steve.
So I would say Nixon was Mother Teresa compared to this guy. I mean, we're not even in the same ballpark. And I think what Des was saying, and Craig, kind of what you were saying, is the first thing was intentional, number one. Number two, I saw in the New York Times today a very fine comparison between the words of George Wallace back in 1968, which those of us who are a little elderly can remember very well, and the words of Donald Trump. The difference, I had remembered it deep in the recesses of my mind, but the Times article refreshed it. Wallace apologized for it. Wallace changed his entire approach and wound up getting elected again as a governor down there, and actually changed and apologized for the things he said. This guy, he'll never change. He'll never be any different. He'll still be the same career criminal he's always been, and he'll behave just the way he did yesterday. And you guys don't think it was a coincidence, do you, that 15 minutes after that jobs report came out, that's when he started tweeting about, I'm going to postpone the election, et cetera, and so forth. The master of disaster. That's what the guy.
But Des is right. Keep your eyes on the ball. I mean, it's not, the economy is in terrible trouble. Congress is still, or the Senate is still dithering about the next aid package. We're looking very close to the start of school, and we don't have the systems in place we need to fully support a full return to school. We don't have the virus response in place that we need. And it's like, eyes on the ball. Like the stuff about postponing the election, that's not going to happen. It's not a thing. My child said years ago, what if people just didn't pay attention to Donald Trump's speeches? Then he wouldn't want to be president and we could have someone else. So, well, out of the mouth of babes.
But what we are witnessing, and I'm glad you brought that up, Nancy, of course, the jobs report, because I was going to talk a bit about that and the GDP drop and the plunge that we're seeing. We're not going to see a rapid recovery here. But what we are seeing is the complete failure on the part of the Republicans to be able to govern in any reasonable fashion. And this is not a new thing right now. They can't even figure out what the starting point is to get this aid package going. And here's the thing. When they had full control of both houses of Congress and the presidency, they still shut down the government. These guys cannot figure out what to do. The Democrats have had a plan out there for 5 weeks that's been passed that hasn't even been brought up in the Senate. Meanwhile, we're going to see unemployment benefits expire tonight unless there's a temporary move to increase them, which I think may be happening today, as a matter of fact. But still, I mean, they are incapable of governing in any meaningful fashion.
This is an ideological crisis, right? Because they've spent the last 40 years peddling the idea that government is always a problem and never the solution. But when you come to a crisis like a pandemic, and the things that are needed to support a nation through the pandemic, not just the response to the virus, but the massive amounts of aid that's required, the supplement to the unemployment, and then the whole host of things we need to respond to the virus. What you have to have here are government solutions. Mm-hmm. But this is a true ideological crisis for them.
And it's a civics lesson,
Well, because they were always wrong. They were always wrong. The government's always
wrong. They just have no idea what government does, and now they're figuring that out. And it's a hard lesson for all of us to have to suffer through that. Kind of understood that.
I believe many Republicans who I have known genuinely believe that the private sector is better at doing things. And some things sure, other things not. But public health responses and social safety net are simply things the private sector cannot and does not do. Mm-hmm. And so this is a moment where it requires people like Mitch McConnell, people in his caucus, to reverse, at least 40 years of committed ideology. That's hard, and I'm not optimistic about how it's going to go.
Well, I mean, go ahead, Steve.
I would suggest to you that, like it is with so many different things, for instance, the pandemic, all these people who poo-poo it, they don't have any close friends like I did, lifetime friends who died from the disease. The Republicans in Congress, they never have to, the reason they don't need the government, they are the government. They get what they want. They had enough government to lower everybody's taxes. It's making $1 million a year. I think if they had to live through what normal people have to live through, you wouldn't see this kind of stalling around over extending, for instance, the unemployment benefits. The problem is they're so isolated in their own little shell, and I agree with you, Nancy, at least 40 years, at least since Reagan. They're so isolated in their own little group, they're fine. It's what happens to the rest of us, who cares?
There should be some contingency there that is tied to their pay, that until the issue is resolved, their pay is withheld or something. where they actually feel a little something, although a lot of them are so wealthy,
So
it wouldn't be a big deal.
the thing that I don't really get is, and the thing that I think may push them to move, is that the schools question, that is red, blue, that is a universal issue, because no one really wants to roll the dice with their kids' lives, right? This is where we all, I want to keep asking lawmakers who say reopen bars, reopen whatever. It's like, well, how about schools? Because this is where the rubber hits the road, right? So, and also it's insane to me that we have things that aren't schools open, because that should be our number one priority, is making schools safe. So why is it safe to have a bar open and not a school? Like, well, it's not. So shut the freaking bar and let's focus on schools.
But Nancy, I mean, it seems to me like there's a whole segment of the population that is so caught up in conspiracy theories and in denial that they are perfectly willing to send their kids to school, and they're the ones demanding that schools be open and that they send their kids back. I mean, they don't see the risk.
Yeah, I don't know that it divides up on straight lines, because you have, for example, I haven't done a comprehensive survey of what districts are doing, but Grosse Pointe is offering full online or full in person, right? Mm-hmm. And DPSTD is offering the same thing, and those are really different communities, right? Is DPSTD offering full online? They're offering.
I believe they are at
but
this
then,
point.
But then my child goes to a charter school in Detroit, and they're offering a hybrid, 2 days in person, 2 days online, or full online. Mm-hmm. So I mean, these are different. I don't know that it divides up along ideological lines cleanly. But I also know that there were a lot of parents who were clamoring for schools to reopen until Trump said we need to reopen schools. And then a lot of parents said, well, it's a really bad idea. So it's just, there is a lot of ideology, but I don't know that it dices up cleanly here.
Well, I mean, look, the economy cannot recover if schools are not open. If this was the 1950s,
Parents
back when you had one breadwinner households, that might be a different situation where you had a parent that was able to take the time and do something like this, but that's just not the reality anymore.
Right.
There are a number of people who will not be able to go to work. They will not have any benefits coming in because they can't go to work, because they, for whatever reason, the government doesn't want to actually pay for this kind of stuff. This is just a train wreck waiting to happen. If they're worried about the spending right now, they should be taking a look at pumping trillions into this right now to allow local governments and local school districts to continue to pay their people, come up with some alternative solutions, because you'll get that money back later.
You know what, Craig? I'm having this big deja vu moment. The argument that Detroit will never come back without the schools being fixed. And it's a different, it's a different reason, but the reasoning is exactly the same thing. And that is, if people really don't have safe, good alternatives for their kids' education, then they can't survive in that community. And so I think as Detroiters, we know, outside of pandemics, what this has meant to our ability to float, to stay alive, to get people and communities thriving. And so without those schools, and let's not even talk about how it's setting back, I'm wearing my feminist t-shirt today. I mean, setting back women 50 years, because here we are now defaulting again with women staying home to take care of their children full time without alternatives and support for them to participate in the workforce.
But, and then it's also multi-pronged, because the children, I mean, so the idea that we're going to keep kids out of school until we get a vaccine, I just want everyone to start right now to wrap your minds around that the vaccine is not the magic bullet. You have a number of people right now who don't get vaccines because they don't think it's safe. You have a new group of people who are going to be extremely skeptical of this vaccine because Trump has touched it, and they're going to be wary of anything Trump has touched. I mean, figuratively, hopefully he's literally not touching the vaccine. You're going to have a supply issue where we can't instantly get it to everyone overnight. Then you're going to have efficacy concerns. I mean, the flu vaccine in any given year isn't 100% effective. And then, God forbid, someone has an adverse reaction. It's going to be, our people are going to blow it up. Unfortunately, you know this, we're going to blow it up like the biggest news ever. And I mean, and it will be big news. We have to report on public health, but there's a lot of stuff that's going to, the vaccine is not like, oh, we get a vaccine and then it's over. It's not over when we get the vaccine. And so the idea of holding up in our homes, not sending our kids to school for years is not an option. But the
Yeah.
cool thing is that making it safe to go to school is the same as making it safe to do everything else. Control the virus. We wear your masks, wash your hands. We need more contact tracing. And in my opinion, we need a non-invasive rapid return test, because you can't stick a brain swab into a small child's nose once a week, but you can ask them to spit in a cup or even prick their finger once a week. I'm sorry, but I think pricking the finger is, I know it's very upsetting for little children, but I think it's something that they're more accustomed to than the.
Very true.
And so I think those are the things that we have to focus on and get there if we want to safely reopen everything.
And I'm not mad at the parents who are doing pods, education pods. I mean, this has become sort of a class conversation, but what are you supposed to do? You know, and that's a solution that's viable for some families. Unfortunately, not for all of them.
Well, hold on. Steve was going to chime in here real quick. I want to make sure he gets an opportunity.
No, I think you said, Craig, about the conspiracy theories, just the kind of so-called information that's available to the masses these days, depending on what social media things they look at. I'm old enough to remember. You're talking, Nancy, you're so right. If a vaccine came, all the questions you raised, plus 10 other questions, are things that are going to make a difference as to whether it works, how many people. When I was a kid at Bagley Elementary School, they just told us, get in line. We walked outside somewhere. They either gave us a shot or a pill or something, because Jonas Salk had come up with something that got rid of polio. We were all young enough, but old enough to know people. I had an uncle who had polio. We knew kids in our classes that had polio, but nobody had any other information. We went home. My mom says, what went on in school today? I don't know. They marched us out on Roselawn and we got a vaccine for polio. Said, oh, good. Now go do your homework and we'll see you later. That was it. And I think that's a significant thing, what you guys are talking about. When you have people who don't agree that there are facts, let alone on the facts, they don't agree that there are any facts. And you got all the other questions with this vaccine, I think it's going to be huge problems.
So we have to find a way to re-engage with the normal institutions of life, work and school. We can't, the idea that we're going to not do any of it and just hold on until there's a vaccine, I don't feel like that's a reasonable solution. And we've got to figure out a way.
100%.
Oh, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I was going to say on college campuses, I think in the elementary schools and some of the schools you can control a little bit more and they go home. So there's more of a controlled environment. And I think the university like Michigan State, who's the president is a doctor who's dealt with infectious diseases. And he's like, everything's going to be, we're going to have, social distancing and masks and, staggering classes and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is it's college. I mean, people don't go away to college just to study. They go to party. And there's going to be a lot of partying still. I mean, we saw the bar in East Lansing where it was, 189 cases were traced to that one bar. I mean, I can't imagine that there's not going to be keggers and whatever at houses and dorms. People are going to be partying and getting high and hooking up. And I think if they try to do it, I think it's going to be a very short term. Because I think people are going to be sent home and they'll finish it up on, on the online.
And to tie this back up real quick, I mean, does anybody who read President Trump's tweet yesterday about postponing the election, talking about, well, if we can't do a safe election, but he's still pushing for schools to open. So if we can't hold an election in a safe manner, what's he to say? How is he suggesting that schools can be reopened safely? And the irony here is that most polling places are indeed in schools. So if you can't have a safe election in a school, you're going to send kids there. I mean, the level of
safe from the virus, he means the imaginary specter of voter fraud.
Well, that's true, but
I've
already sent in 20 different ballots, so
I go with Mayor Daley, vote early and often.
But it seems the disconnect that's there. He doesn't even realize that he's contradicting himself when he does this dumb stuff, and it is indeed dumb stuff. I think the thing that really ticked me off the most about what he did yesterday was the fair housing stuff. Sitting there saying he's going to roll back the Obama administration's rules on fair housing. And those of you living the quote unquote suburban dream don't have to worry about poor people moving to your neighborhood anymore. I mean, this is a disturbing, disgusting display from a disgusting, disturbed Donald.
I've never seen really in modern time such a racist comments publicly. I mean, we knew Nixon made racist comments privately because we listen to the tapes, but I've never seen in modern times, and I'm talking about back to Eisenhower and we've never seen such blatantly racist comments that are so not even disguised. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And the thing is that people are used to it. Nothing shocks them anymore. I mean, I was talking to a friend the other day, and I said, what are the chances of a president someone getting elected to be president when they slept with a porn star and they paid off a porn star? That would have been normally scandalous enough to put them out of business. But nothing, we're to the point where nothing matters anymore.
I have to quote Joe Biden here, that Donald Trump is our first racist president.
Yeah.
And I think what Biden meant, which is a ridiculous statement, but I think what he's saying exactly what you're saying, Alan. Like, they all were racist on some level, more than likely, but people have enough sense to not articulate it, not say it so brazenly, and so being just so racist forward about it. And that is quite the shocker. I think that he has been the tool of awakening for a lot of people. As much as people have rallied behind his racist behavior and support it and have welcomed the opportunity to be openly racist without any repercussions, there are many others who said, oh, wow, I guess I've been sleeping a little. Like, I had no idea that this was out there. And I think this has been a wonderful way for Americans to start to feel like, okay, there are lines, and I think we're at it now.
I agree with you 1,000%. I was about to say the same thing. Alan, I like when he does stuff like yesterday. I enjoy it because I know people. I'm embarrassed to say it. I know people at our synagogue, and these are Jews of all people. They have a business voting for this guy, who have told my wife and my God, I thought I was blah, 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 blah. I thought it was, I hated the Clintons. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. But any number of people have said to us that they would never vote for this guy again. So every time, I agree with Des 1,000%. When he does stuff like this, his base, it doesn't matter what he says. He could go blah, 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 and they're okay. But he offends yet another person and yet another person the other way. And I don't know if I said this. I want to throw this out to you guys. We're all talking because all of us want to be rid of him so badly. And people are saying, well, but maybe this, what about that? Here's why I think we don't have to worry. I have not read or heard of any one human being that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 and now has decided, I'm going to vote for Trump, okay? On the other hand, you read the newspaper, you talk to people out in the street, all you hear all the time is, God damn, I voted for that son of a bitch. I'll never vote for him again.
So I
won the popular vote by 3 million, right? And there's probably 3 or 5 million more who are doing exactly what Des and I are thinking, which is, this motherfucker I'm going to vote for? Are you kidding me?
So
that's my thought.
I like your optimism. And I do think it is winnable for Democrats because really Joe Biden needs to be a 1 percentage point more popular than Hillary, who is a historically unpopular candidate. Unpacking that as a whole separate show. In 6 states, right? So he can do this. It's about getting Democrats out to vote, though. It's not necessarily about Republicans. I really am very confused, or not confused. I have a lot of questions about how, you have his base, which is this relatively small group of people who, like he said, if he shot someone, they wouldn't care. But then you have this larger group. I wrote a column about this late last year of respectable Republicans who found him personally distasteful, but voted for him because the tax cuts, because
tax
they didn't
cuts and Supreme Court justices.
And Supreme Court justices. Up until the pandemic, I was not convinced that any of that group of people was going to change their vote. I don't know if the pandemic means that they will change their vote.
Well,
I hope that it would, but they knew he was a racist. This is Central Park 5, right? They knew that he was a sexist. Like, there was no, these are, and I'm talking about people who wouldn't.
And they knew he was a crook and a liar.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm talking about people who wouldn't invite him to their homes, wouldn't leave him alone with their wife or daughter. But yet they voted for him because there was this suite of conservative reforms that he could.
Well, let's hope that they've stolen enough in 4 years that they feel okay.
I don't think these are bad guys. I think they're people who are,
But I have a question for you, Nancy. You're not discounting, I'm sure, I mean, I hear the part about tax cuts and Supreme Court justices, but we can't pretend that there wasn't this huge amount of hatred for not just Hillary, but her husband too, for the
Oh, yeah.
Clintons, the Clintons, the Clintons.
Well,
And Biden, whatever else he is, he's not a Clinton. He's just
Yeah.
an old guy that's a decent enough guy.
Biden has his.
Joe Biden,
No,
decent enough. I
think-
mean, is that the bumper sticker this year?
Good enough.
I think his.
You know,
I think his. I think he's again. I think he is. I mean, if you're looking at it from being 1 percentage point more popular than an unpopular candidate, then yeah, it's not such a hard lift. I also think there's a lot of people. I mean, he wasn't my first choice, or probably my second, but there's a lot of us who, at any time in the last 4 years, if someone would have said to you, if you take a hammer and bang your pinky toe, we can swap Donald Trump for Joe Biden, we would have all been lining up for hammers to bang our pinky toes. So, like, let's just feel that way. Let's feel that way.
If I had a nickel for every Republican that I know that said to me, well, if you guys nominate Biden, I will vote for him. You can put Biden in there.
The problem is,
they will. But hey, we have to move on. We do have to,
I got.
we do have to move on. All right, go ahead, Nancy,
But
and then
every
Alan.
time a Republican says that, it turns off a progressive, right? So, and we've got to get people out to vote, and they can't. We can't ignore the fact that we need the left wing of the party to
Oh,
support.
I'm just telling you what I heard. In this bizarre little circle that I occupy. Alan, go ahead.
I was going to say it's interesting. There's some special interest groups, like some of the Jews, particularly some of the Orthodox Jews who have voted for Trump because of Israel. They see him as being, unabashed supporter. The Chaldean community, which is interesting. I'm really curious, and I think that's an interesting story. The Chaldean community embraced him because they saw him as anti-Muslim, anti-ISIS. And then he started deporting Chaldeans. And then suddenly, it's funny, there was a Chaldean, I wanted somebody to write a column about this, is that he came to Macomb County, I think it was in January, and he said, we're going to put an end to this deportations of Chaldeans. And instead of saying, oh my God, how hypocritical, just right before the election, he's suddenly reversing himself. This one Chaldean who's a Republican said, oh my God, it's so great. He's finally the first president to ever say the word Chaldean. We're so, and I'm like, what are you talking about? He's the one who's been sending the Chaldeans, trying to deport them. And now he's reversing that. And he's a hero in your mind? How is that? But I'd be curious where the Chaldean community stands on him right now.
Well, we'll see in November, I have a feeling. Hey, real quick, and I'm going to save this because one of them is my schmuck of the week. But, we're talking about what's going to turn people in the base, that 38% or whatever that seems to cling to him no matter what. Coronavirus, we're starting to see some high-profile people catch and die from this. Herman Cain passed away yesterday from coronavirus. Louis Gohmert contracted it, and we'll talk a bit about him later on because he is my nominee, and I'll get to that. But I think that's the kind of thing when it's hitting home in a lot of the states that supported him, and you're starting to see those numbers in places like Florida that are just not going in the right direction. And I just think that this is going to be problematic for him. Hey, real quick. Oh, go ahead, Fish.
That's why I said what I said before about everybody can have their opinion, but when it starts happening to somebody close to you, a relative, a friend of yours, your next door neighbor, all of a sudden you start scratching your head. I agree with you, Craig. 100%.
Well, hey,
and I don't want to sound real righteous about this, but I mean, it's politically there's consequences, but it's really incredibly tragic that there are millions of people who didn't believe it was a thing. They believe what they were being told, and now they're going to get sick, and some of them are going to die.
Yep.
That's heartbreaking. It really is.
It is. But let's move on. There was a big event at Capitol Hill this week. Bill Barr finally sitting down in front of the House Judiciary Committee, and I don't know what people were expecting from this because this is a slippery dude, Bill Barr. You don't become attorney general twice because you don't know what the heck you're doing or how to handle congressional committees. I think the Democrats missed a real opportunity to really pin him down on certain things. And there were a couple of moments where he seemed to actually be uncomfortable and feisty. But man, I was surprised at how many people on the Republican side are still willing to stand up for some of the crap that this guy is trying to pull in places like Portland right now. Steve Fishman, I'm going to ask you because, again, you deal a lot with the Federal Justice Department. Bill Barr's appearance the other day, how did he do?
Here's what I thought. The same, you guys have heard me say this before on this show. If the Democratic politicians had been smart, they would have had a lawyer like they did during the impeachment hearings. They'd have given that person 25 minutes or 30 minutes. It's not so easy as Mr. Trump saw when Chris Wallace eviscerated him in his 45-minute interview. It's not so easy to dodge questions when you got the same person, and the same person's going to ask him. The same person's been experienced doing these kinds of things. What they let him do, they were making speeches, so he made speeches. You're absolutely right. He's experienced at this kind of stuff. He's a bully in his own way, and he knows how to handle those kind of guys. What you need is a criminal lawyer or a trial lawyer who will sit there, cut him off. Excuse me, sir, that's not what I asked you to do. Just what you saw happen with Wallace and Trump. They passed on their opportunity yet again because so many of them, they want to be on TV and they want to look like they're tough guys.
But
and then they, you know.
I agree.
Part of it seemed, though,
I think
there were so many subjects that they were trying to get to, so you weren't really able to pin them down on any one particular thing, Alan. I mean, it seemed that the focus changed every 5 minutes to a different issue, and so you couldn't get any. There was no closure there.
Right. I mean, with the limitation of time, it's so easy to sort of get around it all. And I found it. I mean, I like the idea that they were trying to beat up on him, but I find it kind of bothersome, the whole forum, the way it is. I mean, it's like basically they're kind of asking questions, but they're really just basically saying, "I'm going to beat the hell out of you for 5 minutes," and then the optics are not great, really, because they're asking questions, but they really don't want him to answer. And so there's got to be, as Steve would say, it's probably there's a different way to go about it where we get real answers and there's not a lot of showboating. And I mean, we see it on both sides, where the Republicans say, "Thank you for your service, Mr. Barr." And then I don't like the forum. I think it's a bad optic.
It's always about showboating. It's like, you have one side saying, "Thank you for your service, Mr. Barr." Is the president awesome or super awesome?
I was traumatized by the Kavanaugh hearings, and then on the heels of that, the impeachment. And I've learned, as a general viewing member of the public, it's a waste of my time to even tune in. I don't expect anything from them.
They haven't learned anything since Anita Hill. I mean, it's just they've been the same sort of, showboating. I remember watching that almost every minute of those hearings when Clarence Thomas was dealing with that in his ascendancy to the Supreme Court. And I just watched how they botched that whole situation. And they don't learn from it. They never change the way that they go about these things. And so, you think you have this opportunity finally, and then you just let it go by and you whiff. It seemed like a whiff to me.
Yeah. And I think it was Alan that just said, "And no closure." I mean, so what?
Exactly. So,
you know what part of that is, Des? What part of that is, and you can see it in regular court too, either inexperienced lawyers or lawyers who don't have a whole hell of a lot of talent. They have a speech to give. It's kind of like Nancy called showboating. They're not listening to the answers. They have no ability to react to the answers. A guy like Wallace, who's I don't think is a lawyer, but he's a professional news person. He's listening to what this idiot is saying, and he's cutting him off and directing him back to what he wants to talk about. When Alan's saying there's no closure, that's because each of the legislators has his or her own speech to give, basically. They're not listening to the answers if there are any answers, and therefore it comes across like it's all disjointed, which it is. That's basically just a lack of legal skills and a lack of the ability to give somebody 20, 25, 30 minutes to cross-examine this guy, and then he would start to look like the asshole that he is.
Well,
that
came across anyway, though. I mean,
lost opportunity there, I think, to really get to the really core of the answers.
And there's so many different questions that they have about some of the actions he's taken. Like I said, there were just far too many subjects that they were trying to get to, because there are so many egregious things that have taken place since he's taken that office. Nancy, you were saying? Oh, maybe not. Okay.
And everybody wants to read their denunciation.
I was going to say, I don't think we've seen an evil attorney general like that, maybe since John Mitchell. I mean, we've had some incompetent attorney generals not so long ago, really under Bush. We had
Bill Barr,
Gonzalez, who was pretty incompetent. Ed Meese was not the brightest attorney general we've had, but we've had some really good ones, and both Republican and Democrat. But I think Barr is just evil.
All right. Well, okay. We have to touch on this for just a second, because one of the things that just shocked me this week is I was watching the news the other morning, and you have the little crawl on the bottom that's got the sort of some synopsis of the story right there, right? Synopsis of the story. And the crawl that came across said, Trump continues to defend doctor who believes in demon semen, hydroxychloroquine, and alien DNA. And I posted it on Facebook, and I just said, wow, there's something I didn't expect to see. And you read it. What was puzzling to me is how many people were coming out there to defend hydroxychloroquine. I said, but wait, you're overlooking the alien DNA and the demon semen, as it said on the screen, to jump to the point where the hydroxychloroquine argument might be real. And I said, if you're willing to forget the first two to find that one little glimmer of hope in the third part, then maybe there's something wrong with your cognitive skills here. Because I'm sorry, do some vetting. Find out who this person is before you sit there and go, oh, she's fantastic. She's awesome. She believes that endometriosis is caused by having sex with demons in your dreams. This is not a reputable person. This is not somebody that the president of the United States
do believe in
giving an audience to.
I do believe in demon semen. I'm going to tell you right now.
And I think that having sex with demons will mess you up, and I don't see how you can argue the otherwise, Craig. It's bad news.
Well, yes, that's where your fibroid cysts come from.
Nancy, it depends on who you've been hanging around with. If you've been having sex with demons, I mean, I don't know. Yeah.
But at the same time, the fact that so many people wanted to go retweet this woman without doing any research into who she is. I mean, you know,
have
she's
they
got a
vetted
church
anyone?
next to her clinic.
Have they vetted anyone
No.
for anything? Why start yesterday?
And I think this is pretty well established now, but like my sister has lupus and she's taken that medication for a long time. It's one of the things that helps her function normally. If it were a medication we had a giant stockpile of and no possible shortage of, then sure, try it, do whatever. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, you know, we have a lot of people who have Sjogren's syndrome, people who have lupus, people who have autoimmune disorders who really need this medication to function normally. It's one of the medications that has helped my sister be a functioning, productive member of society for the 20 years that she's been diagnosed with lupus, as opposed to being someone who can't work and is not able to participate in life as a parent or as a member of the economy. So, sorry,
right. No, that's like I said.
There are legitimate purposes.
There are legitimate purposes for this medication, and it has shown in some studies to be somewhat potentially. It potentially works to stop viral reproduction in the early stages, potentially, but also in concert with a bunch of other things. So they just don't know, but they keep still pushing this as a potential cure. Although today Fauci says we may have a vaccine by the end of the year. He's cautiously optimistic, as he said. He said the trials are going pretty well, so who knows? But all right, so we're running out of time here, and we're a little bit over. So I guess we should probably go to Schmuck of the Week. I already mentioned mine, so I'll go first. Mine is Texas Republican Louis Gohmert, called coronavirus, and then actually had the audacity to blame it on wearing a mask. He seems to think that maybe he set his mask down somewhere that had the coronavirus on it, and that's how he got it, because he kept breathing in his own air, which, again, doesn't happen, you moron. And he's still going to go down clinging to that mask thing. Louis Gohmert he's my schmuck of the week. Thanks a lot, Louis. Who do you got, Alan?
I am going to go with Kalamazoo County Sheriff Richard Fuller, who somebody put on Facebook, called him a fat ass who needs to go on a diet, and he sent his detectives to investigate the situation. And so people were bothered that he was using resources for that. So.
All right. Let's see. Des, you got a schmuck of the week?
How about Tom Cotton?
Always a good choice.
Arkansas senator who said he's introduced a bill to prevent the 1619 project that the New York Times put forward on the 400th anniversary of Africans being brought involuntarily to the shores of North America.
Well, and didn't he also say that slavery was a necessary evil?
Yes, he said that the correct context of slavery was not the 1619 project, which basically the whole premise of that project is that slavery was a founding principle
Sure.
of this nation that permeate every aspect of and every structure that we built ever since. And he said, no, no, no. What the founding fathers actually felt was that slavery was a necessary evil. They weren't necessarily for it, but it was necessary to help build our nation. So, you know, his last name is Cotton. And therein lies both the rub and the reason. You know, this man's an idiot. So I think he's the king schmuck of the week.
Okay.
Nancy,
Fishman.
let Nancy go. I'll go
Okay,
last.
Nancy, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to do a schmuck of the week because I think that we're, you point a finger at someone calling them a schmuck, you got three pointing back at you, right?
Oh,
And
hey,
I mean,
look,
I think we're all kind of schmucks, right? Because this is the country that we built, right? So that's what I'm the schmuck of the week.
Wow.
Okay, you
well,
know what? That was great. Now, who do you really think is the schmuck of the week?
I always agree with Des.
Well, I'll give Nancy my extra one because I was going to have two, and the other one was Herman Cain's staff. Not going to give Herman Cain schmuck of the week. The man just passed away from coronavirus, but his staff, while he was on a ventilator, was still putting out text messages claiming that this is a hoax. And so they are my schmucks of the week. Herman Cain's Twitter staff, or whatever they are, his social media staff, because they were doing that while he was dying of COVID.
I will say I had my whole thing about how I wasn't going to do a schmucks, and then all y'all made real good cases for who you think are schmucks, and I was like, I should have thought of something. No, I'm kidding.
That's all right.
I really do think we all share some credit for where we're at, unfortunately. So
Well, of course.
not us. No, I'm kidding. All of us.
No, that's all
I
right.
blame it on
Fishman,
China.
who do
Sorry.
you got?
I won't take any
Well,
responsibility.
mine, it's always tough to beat Louis Gohmert because he combines the rare qualities of pomposity and ignorance so well. It's tough to beat him. But my schmuck of the week is Bill Barr. I think that his testimony, whether or not we like the cross-examination of it, Bill Barr has done more as a person who knows better. Trump is a career criminal. That's different. But Bill Barr has done more to corrupt this country in the time that he's been the attorney general, starting with his basic refusal to accept the fact that the concept of attorney general means he's the lawyer for all of us. He's not the personal lawyer for the chief asshole, okay? So to me, a guy who knows better, who's been involved in government for all these years, who's a religious zealot, according to him, and all you have to do is read his speech at Notre Dame, and you know for sure he is one. For him to have really sold the country out with his behavior, and I guess just summarized by his testimony this week, he's my schmuck of the week. And he could probably win pretty much every week till January 20th when they're gone.
Well, if they're gone, no.
Not
We
if,
shall see.
when.
Yeah,
That's
history is not going to remember him kindly unless things go the other way, and he's one of the saints of the New Republic. So either way.
Ooh, wow, that's really dark.
He'll
Nancy.
be on Trump TV, Nancy. He'll be on Trump TV starting January 21st.
That's
assuming that
fine.
the Marines,
I'm telling
assuming, of course, that the Eastern District of New York doesn't come out and indict him, which they very well might, which would give us the great pleasure of seeing him marched off into the federal courthouse as a defendant in the United States versus Trump. That is my dream.
you.
Wow.
You're
There you go.
you're an optimist, man.
Ever hopeful
What do we
for the
say? What do
future.
we say in Yiddish? Lenkel alavai. It should go that way, right?
All right. Well, we got to wrap it up for the week. I certainly do appreciate everybody tuning in to watch the live feed here on Facebook. Remember, this will be turned into a podcast a little bit later on today. It'll be available anywhere you get your podcast. Just look up the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit. Subscribe, like it. All that stuff helps. Rate the show. If you like it, great. Helps a ton. Gets us in all those search engines and all that kind of stuff that we need to do. But the numbers are going in the right direction, everybody. So I appreciate the support. It has been great to see. Also, don't forget, go to deadlinedetroit.com for all your news needs each and every day. Another piece from Eric Starkman up there today about what's going on at Beaumont Health. That is an interesting situation, and Eric's been doing great work there. So check out that series. I interviewed him earlier this week as well. There's a podcast up on Deadline Detroit right now that you can go listen to our discussion about what he has been discovering over there. Thanks to my guests, Steve Fishman. Always appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
All right. Nancy Kaffer from the Detroit Free Press. Keep up the good work there. We always appreciate reading your stuff, and we appreciate it when you come on to join us. Thank you.
It was a pleasure, Craig.
All right, Desiree Cooper, we always appreciate you as well, and good luck with everything, and we'll have you back real soon. Oh, by the way, real quick, Des, tell us about this film. The subject of this film is something I did not know about until you're the first one that I've ever even known to really know about this woman. Talk about her for a second.
Well, in 2006, when I was still at the Free, I did a story about Sarah Elizabeth Ray. She is Detroit's other Rosa Parks. She's the woman who sat down on the Bob Lowe boat and was kicked off because they weren't integrated at the time. They didn't allow Black people to ride the boat. She got kicked off. This was in 1945. Marched herself to the NAACP, ended up filing a lawsuit, and the case went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, where the segregation on the Bob Lowe boat was struck down as unconstitutional. Thurgood Marshall argued the amicus brief in the Supreme Court, and it was one of the linchpins toward marching to the Supreme Court with a case that would eventually overturn legalized segregation across the entire United States. And that happened years later at Brown versus Board. So this case was a stepping stone toward ending segregation in the United States, and the decision in Brown v. Board. So nobody's heard about this woman, Sarah Elizabeth Ray. I've partnered with a filmmaker, Aaron Schillinger, and we have a 4-minute short film about it. You can find it at Detroit'sOtherRosaParks.com, and help us do research and make this a fully feature film. That's what we're aiming for.
Well, and I should also give a little kudos to the Freep, because it was part of the Freep Film Festival
Absolutely.
as well. So that's very, very cool. All right, Alan Langle, again, thank you for your time, sir, and I'm going to give you the last word as I do every week.
And stay home safely.
Have a good weekend, all.
My name's ML Elric. I'm an investigative reporter and a connoisseur of fine yogurts. I know a little bit about Detroit. I know a little bit about deadlines. And I'm asking you to become a member of DeadlineDetroit.com. Like me, I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm making a monthly donation. My wife is making a monthly donation. I know that seems redundant, but they need the money, and the money goes to a good place. Getting the story out, getting the truth out. Because if we don't support local journalism, there's some people a couple blocks away from here who are going to get away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to cost you a whole lot more than just a few bucks out of your pocket every month. Go to DeadlineDetroit.com, become a member. You'll see it's really easy at the top of the website. Give early, give often, give generously. Just give a damn. That's the best way I know how.